What's the job of a tech lead? What is it that makes a tech lead effective? In my view, it's about a lot more than being the best programmer or technologist on the team. So what does it take? That's our topic for today. Hi, I'm Dave Farley and welcome to the Modern Software Engineering channel. If you haven't been here before, please do hit subscribe, and if you enjoy the content today, hit like as well. The day when, as a developer, you're asked to take on the role of a tech lead represents a big step, not necessarily in terms of pay or even recognition, but in terms of the influence that you're likely to have in this new role. Bosses and non-technical collaborators will listen to you differently and expect different things from you. Now you represent the team. Your fellow developers will probably listen to you differently and expect different things from you too. I think that there are several things that are important to your first steps as a team lead, and I've spoken about some of those before. I think that you'll find some good advice on some of the tactics of team leadership in this video from early on in the life of the channel, so I recommend that you watch it after you watch this one. But I don't want to repeat what's in that one here. I want to talk about something else. So instead, let's look at the more strategic elements of leadership and what our goals as a leader should be and how do we measure our success in that kind of role. Fundamentally, it's my view that professional software development is a team sport. Despite the cultural mythology to the contrary, great software is not the product of lone genius. Sure, the seeds of an idea may start out in a few people's heads, but execution matters a lot. Great ideas aren't enough on their own. Our ability to follow through and make them work is the real measure of success. And that always takes more than just some lone wolf genius programmer. Let me pause there and say thanks to our sponsors. We're extremely fortunate to be sponsored by EqualExpert and Transfic. Transfic is a financial technology company applying advanced continuous delivery techniques to deliver low-latency trade routing services to some of the biggest financial institutions in the world. But both of these companies offer products and services that are extremely well aligned with the topics that we discuss here on this channel every week. So if you're looking for excellence in continuous delivery and software engineering in general, do click on their links in the description below to check them out. So if the team's the real unit of software delivery, then the real job of an effective team lead is to maximize the capabilities of the team. So as I described in that earlier video, to do that, we need to promote a range of skills and behaviors. Effective collaboration, good communication, a sense of ownership, personal responsibility for our work, and team-scaled autonomy, as well as the more technical skills that we talk about so often here on the Modern Software Engineering channel: test-driven development, behavior-driven development, continuous integration, continuous delivery, progress in small steps, evolutionary design, and speed of feedback. This may seem like a complicated collection of things to worry about. Where do you begin to encourage a team to become good at all of these things? Well, I've cheated, because at least to my eyes, these are all related by one simple concept: speed of feedback. If we optimize everything that we do to maximize speed of feedback, I think that it leads us to adopt and get good at pretty much everything else. The core of the tech lead playbook, from my perspective, is really to guide and support the team to work together on shared goals, ideally via pair or mob programming to deliver high-quality software and to regularly and accurately sample where we are on our way towards our goals. And we facilitate that by staying focused on continuously optimizing and improving the speed and quality of our feedback. So I'd always start by improving feedback. It's only through good feedback that we can learn, and software development is always an exercise in learning. Let me tell you about a company that I worked with a few years ago. This was a financial trading company writing complex, low-latency trading systems. I was tasked with helping them to improve their overall engineering approach. This company were very good, very successful, but there was certainly room to improve. There were several hundred developers organized into lots of small teams, and when I started working with them, they already released change nearly every day. So that was already probably better than 90% of companies building software. Their problem was more about lead time and the operational load of releasing and maintaining these changes. It was a lot of work. The problem was that they had a very large C++ build at the core of their offering. There was lots of other stuff and other technologies too, but the C++ build took 9.5 hours to build the code and run all of the tests. They had decent but not stellar test coverage. It wasn't terrible, but the tests were a bit tactical and a bit too complicated given the software that they were testing. The tests were exclusively written after the code, and as a result of that, they were over-complex because the code wasn't designed to be testable. And so overall, the execution of these tests was rather slow for what it was that they tested. The result of all of this was this 9.5-hour build. They operated an overnight build process to allow for the time. All very well, and as I said, probably better than many companies, but not really great. The team had adopted a sensible approach to design, and the code was pretty modular. And so each morning, when operations people arrived into work, they would look at the results of the overnight build, and any module where the tests had passed were generally deemed fit for release, and any module with a failing test was rejected, though both were subject to review with the development team. This worked fine most of the time, unless, of course, a passing module depended on a failing module. And that did happen sometimes, so there were problems in production as a result of this kind of failure. This was a fairly manually intensive process, requiring some hard thinking and sometimes tough decisions by people to decide whether to release a change or not. And this was true even though the build and testing were all automated. It relied too heavily on human decision-making. They'd been operating this process for 3 years when I joined, and a developer who'd been there from the start told me that in that 3-year period, there had only been 2 occasions when they'd achieved a fully green build, that is, all the tests passing. The problem with this is really about the speed of feedback. It isn't working well enough as a tool for developers to give them the feedback that they need. Imagine that as a developer, I commit a change and it causes a problem of some kind. I don't find out about the problem until the following day. That is, after the 9.5-hour build has run. If I immediately understand what I did wrong and commit the correction straight away, I don't know if that worked until the following day, and the build won't be fixed until the following day either. So your minimum time to recover is twice the feedback cycle, once to detect the problem and one more time to confirm that you fixed it. When there is a problem, the build is broken for half of that time, in this case for a whole day. So if you have several hundred developers committing changes to a build like this, the chances are that at least one of them will make a mistake every day, so the build will always be broken. So it's not working as an effective feedback or communication mechanism. Every day someone has to pore over the results and interpret them. Developers have to wait for accurate results and don't get them soon enough for the results to be relevant to the stuff that they're working on now. It's always a lagging indicator, and lagging by at least a day. The team responsible for the build was unsurprisingly called the build team. It was tiny, 2 people, and they were responsible for the environment's infrastructure like build management systems and the code that ran the builds for the teams across the company. They wanted to work to improve the feedback. They were very good and had lots of ideas and plans, but their main problem was that they were drowning. The weight of usually tactical tickets flooding in from all directions meant that the build team was trapped in firefighting hell. They had a huge backlog of tickets in Jira, some of which had been raised several years before and were still waiting to be addressed. Metaphor mixing aside, this kind of firefighting is a pretty common problem for teams like this. The joke, or is it strategy, is to stop fighting fires and start building fire engines instead. As I said, I was employed to improve the software engineering across the board for this company, but I thought that this was a good place to start, to maximize my influence. So I joined the build team and taught them about continuous delivery, and so impressed upon them the vital strategic importance of the fast feedback that they knew that they wanted. They bought in, and so, as a team, we now had a much stronger shared strategic focus. This, in my view, is a vital attribute of high-performing teams, and an important part of the team leader's job. As a team, we need some form of shared vision, some goal that we all agree is important and that we will work together to achieve. As a team lead, it's not necessarily your job to define that goal, though sometimes it is, as it was in my case here, but it is vital that you understand and agree with the goal, because your job is to keep the team focused on it and moving towards it. Ideally, if you can, you want people to be excited about, enthusiastic about the goal too. Remember, the job of the team lead is to maximize the effectiveness of the team as a whole, and the best way to do that is to get everyone enthusiastically pulling in the same direction. Not easy, but at least for great teams, that's the job. I use the ideas and principles of continuous delivery to help establish that as our shared vision for the build team. We refocused ourselves and all agreed that our real goal was not about processing mountains of tickets, but rather to help the company to transition to a more effective continuous delivery approach. And we would become the continuous delivery evangelists and enablers. So we sketched out an implementation plan that we need to achieve to do this. In team topology speak, our aim was to become a continuous delivery enablement team and also a platform team, supporting but also educating stream-aligned teams writing trading software to do what they did more effectively, and supporting them with tools and technology and knowledge. This was a grandiose ambition. We were only 3 people supporting hundreds of others in lots of different teams, and we still had a mountain of a backlog of tickets to process. So once we'd agreed on our strategic goals, we started thinking about how best to tackle them. We began by prioritizing our work in a new way. Previously, whoever shouted the loudest or was most senior in the organization got their tickets seen to first. We changed that and began prioritizing the backlog items that moved us forward towards our strategic direction over the more tactical things. We decided on these priorities, so this was a step to upping our level of autonomy within the team. We worked on communicating with everyone, explaining what we were doing. We didn't seek permission, but we tried not to blindside people either. We were honest and told them that we were working towards a hard triage, where we dump a large part of the backlog, discarding items that seemed lower value to us, but we did give people an opportunity to appeal our decisions. We were open to persuasion, but also trying to gain control and trying to maintain a laser focus on the strategy rather than the tactical. We got remarkably little pushback on this idea, much less than we expected, and became more confident in doing what seemed right to us as a result. Then we time-boxed how much effort we'd spend on servicing the huge backlog, and we agreed to process backlog items in ways that would prevent the same problem from cropping up again in future. We aimed to implement our services in ways that developers could address the problems that they faced for themselves without us being on the critical path. We worked to improve developer self-service for as many common tasks as we could. This was strategy in dealing with the tactical, I suppose. This was us building fire engines instead of fighting fires. We dedicated 1/3 of our effort, one person, to servicing the backlog, and 2/3 to building on our strategic vision. We took turns on the firefighting so that nobody got stuck doing the drudgery and everybody got a turn at the more exciting strategic work. We began on the strategic fixes with the big problem, the 9.5-hour build. There were also a lot of backlog items related to this, but we dumped many because we thought we could do a better job of solving the real problem than the tactical make-work fixes that people had asked for. We worked hard and tried lots of ideas to speed up the build and test cycle, addressing the elephant in the room, the poor feedback cycle. We built a proper deployment pipeline based on a staged build, organizing for a fast commit cycle and a slower acceptance cycle. Although the acceptance cycle wasn't strictly only focused on acceptance testing. Instead, we decided to do something more tactical than that to move us forwards, and arbitrarily classified any test that took longer than 2 minutes to run as an acceptance test, and so it was allocated to the slower cycle. This was purely tactical, but it meant that we could make fast progress on optimizing the low-hanging sub-2 minute tests. This meant that we could get those changes out to developers much more quickly, without getting hung up on the more challenging, more complicated, slower tests. The end result, after several weeks of development efforts, rewriting and optimizing build scripts, installing better hardware, and all sorts of other optimizations, was that our commit cycle ran now in 12 minutes, and the rest of the slow, notionally acceptance tests completed in under 30 minutes. So our pipeline cycle time had gone from 9.5 hours to 42 minutes. We released this change a few weeks later to the teams, and the impact was immediate. In the first 2 weeks of running our new pipeline, the improved feedback helped teams to better see the flaky tests and to fix them. So with no other changes to technology, process or people, only by improving the speed of feedback and so clarity of feedback, we had our first 2 green builds. Remember, there had only been 2 in the previous 3 years. In the next 2 weeks, and for the rest of my time in that company, we had at least 1 green build every day. And so from then on, we simply released the newest green build each day. This removed lots of work from the process as a result. This is one particular experience, but I think that the general lessons to team leaders from it are these. As a leader, establish and enthuse the teams with a vision of how the future can be better. Organise work to make real progress, however small the steps are towards that vision, but divided into those small measurable steps. Establish enough autonomy so that the team can act, but don't close up shop to the extent that you alienate teams and people around you. And try not to leave them waiting too long before they see some results, even if those results are only a result of those small steps that you take. Communicate inside and outside the team to explain the vision. If you are part of an enabling or a platform team, prioritize your work to reduce your own workload. Make the services that you provide to others self-service for your users. Build fire engines, don't fight fires. Optimize to maximize feedback in your own work and for anyone that depends on it where you can. Always make progress in small steps and organize your work as a series of small, controlled, evidence-based experiments so that you can learn from it. Thank you very much for watching. And if you're a regular viewer of our channel, have you thought about supporting us by joining our Patreon community? There are lots of benefits to that. And while I'm here, I'd like to say thank you to our existing Patreon members. Thank you. Your support's really important to us. Thanks and bye-bye.